there guys, welcome back to my channel. So today we're going to be talking about Rise of the Titans, and basically I'm going to try my best to explain why it's not as bad as we thought. Well, at least the ending. The rest of the movie is perfect. And I pretty much can sum up like why we didn't like the ending, and it's because it's not what we wanted and it's not what we expected to happen. But I went ahead and I did 6 points, and basically in these 6 points I'm going to answer all your questions. So without further ado, let's get started into the video.
Okay, so here are my 6 points of the video. Number 1, why did Jim go so far back in time? Number 2, why did Jim go back in time? Number 3, why did Jim not take the mantle as the Trollhunter? Number 4, is Toby the new Trollhunter now? Number 5, what about the rest of the characters? And number 6, how much will the story change? Now that we got our 6 points, let's get started. Okay, so point 1. Why did Jim go so far back in time?
Now this is a very, very good point. And basically, I think the main answer to that is there's 2 different ways we can look at this. Number 1 is Jim purposely chose to go that far back in time. And why is that? Well, I think it might have to do with him not wanting to be the Trollhunter anymore. Lots of people saying that, oh, Jim failed, that's why he didn't want to become the Trollhunter. I think it's a little bit more than that. Maybe he felt like he failed as a Trollhunter, so he wants someone else to have a go at it. Or number 2 is that Jim didn't have a choice of how far back the time stone would take him. He didn't know how far the time stone would go, so once he activated it, he could have thought it could be 20 minutes later, or it could have been hours later. Who knew it would be 3 years after, 3 years before Rise of the Titans. So I feel like I personally like that idea more, where Jim didn't know how far back he would go, and he didn't know what he would be truly sacrificing in the end. He knew that he'd be sacrificing a lot, but I don't think he knew that it would be that far back in time.
Okay, point number 2 is why did Jim go back in time?
Why not just mourn the deaths like a normal person? Mainly because he had the power and he had the ability to save the people he loved and cared about. That is pretty much, I think, Jim's fatal flaw is loyalty and the love that he has for others. He is willing to do anything, go anywhere, go back in time, for example, to save the people he loves. Now that's exactly what he did in Rise of the Titans at the end. He was able to save Toby if he went back in time. Not only was he able to save Toby, he was able to save Strickler, Namora, Nari. Now we can go back and stop Droll from dying, stop Merlin from dying, and stop... who else dies? Vindel from dying. He can save all those deaths just because he went back in time. Now, going back in time was a huge sacrifice for him because he didn't know how things would play out at the end. The real question is, does he still have the amulet, and how many times can he go back in time? I don't know if he still has the amulet. We don't get to see it, but Wizards kind of hints to something here, and here are my thoughts. Okay, so in Wizards, not sure what episode it is. It's Battle of Killhead Bridge Part 2. It's at the very end when they're about to go back to their normal time. They're going back to Arcadia. Well, this happens. Well, Clara says to Jim, I will date you for 1,000 lifetimes, James Lake Jr. Now, at first, we're like, okay, that's just a romantic quote. But then, after Rise of the Titans, it becomes a little bit more serious. The fact that she said, I'll date you for 1,000 lifetimes. How many lifetimes is Jim going to live? With the new amulet, he has endless possibilities. Now, there is the fact that, 1, the amulet has not been created, technically, because Krell hasn't made it yet. And then, 2, will Krell ever make it if Toby doesn't fail as a Trollhunter? Not saying that Jim failed, but I'll go ahead and explain that more in the next parts of the video. But to explain this, I think that Jim should still have the amulet. Mainly because if you look past other time travel movies, Back to the Future, for example, the DeLorean goes back into the 50s, even though the DeLorean wasn't even invented yet. Or, for example, what else is a time travel thing? If you use a time machine, that time machine comes with you. The amulet worked as a time machine for Jim, so I definitely believe that Jim still has the amulet. And maybe that is why he let Toby go ahead and take the Trollhunter's Amulet of Daylight, which I can explain more in the next part, which we're going to get into right now.
Part 3. Why did Jim not take the mantle of the Trollhunter?
we all know that Jim got to see in the past that what his life would be like if he wasn't the Trollhunter. We get to see an Unbecoming episode. It's episode 11, Unbecoming, in season 2. We get to see what his life would be like if he wasn't the Trollhunter. It turns out that Droll would actually find the amulet and that he would become the new Trollhunter. But the thing is, Droll would have to wait until nightfall to get the amulet, and that is why Toby was able to find it before Droll. I know there was lots of questions before that, but because Droll couldn't go out in the daylight. So since Toby was able to find it in the daytime instead of having to wait till the shadows and nightfall, that's why Toby finds the amulet before Droll was able to take the amulet for himself. So, why did Jim not become the Trollhunter? I think the answer for that question would be because he has the amulet. He already has the new amulet. For the good of all, daylight is mine to command. He doesn't need the Trollhunter's amulet. And I feel like he was ready to let someone else take the mantle. And he had already so much responsibility on himself that he had to make sure that he was playing all his cards right. Knowing time and the way events can play out is the most dangerous, I think, and most burden thing you can have as a character. And for Jim to have the burden of all of that, have the burden of, he knows who dies. He knows what the failures that will happen. He knows that Hearthstone will be destroyed. He knows everything. So it is his job to try to make sure to keep that level and try to make sure everything stays in place. Now, the fact that Jim is not the Trollhunter, he can focus on trying to make sure everything happens the way it's supposed to happen. Now, I kind of explain this later on in the next parts of my video, but some things will not happen the same now that Jim is not the Trollhunter. A lot of things will change, but I'll explain that later on because it's a lot that will happen. But because now that Jim decided not to be the Trollhunter, he let Toby go ahead and find the amulet and take the amulet, he can go ahead and coach and train Toby the way of the Trollhunters and try to teach him okay, don't do this, but do this. And I think it would be really cool. Unfortunately, we probably won't get to see it because Rise of the Titans was the last thing of the Tales of Arcadia, but that's one thing I would love to see is Jim trying to teach Toby on how to become the Trollhunter and trying to train him and show him the ways of the Trollhunters. This is the way, you know what I'm saying?
Okay, so now part 4 is Toby the new Trollhunter.
Now, we don't really have any proof about this. We don't have a proof of yes, and we don't have a proof of no. What we do have going for us, at the end of the movie of Rise of the Titans, the amulet does call out his name. Now, the amulet has called out other people's names who are not the Trollhunter. Arg, for example. At the beginning of season 2, when they're trying to get Jim out of the Darklands, the amulet does call out Arg's name. Now, not because he's the Trollhunter, but so they can save the Trollhunter. Now, that could mean that the amulet called out Toby's name so he can transport the amulet to Jim before someone else could find it. Or it could mean that the amulet actually called out to Toby to be the actual new Trollhunter. We don't know for sure. Now, unfortunately, I do think it was calling out to him that way he could be the new Trollhunter. Lots of people, no, not lots of people, but I've heard some people say it's Toby's destiny. We can't change destiny. And even Jim says destiny is a gift at the end of the movie when he's showing Toby, go ahead and pick up the new amulet. Well, not the new amulet, the old amulet. But still. So, the only problem I have with the whole destiny thing, if it was truly Toby's destiny to pick up the amulet, he would have picked it up the first time. Now, in the canals, Jim and Toby are both there when they find the amulet. Technically, Jim, sees it first, but they're right there when Jim picks it up. Now, if it was truly Toby's fate and destiny, it would have called out Toby's name, but it called out Jim's name. So I'm going to go ahead and believe that the amulet was calling out Toby's name, that way he could give the amulet to Jim. Or right when Jim gets close enough to the amulet, I think it will connect to him, just like in the episodes of Trollhunters when he loses his amulet and it comes back to him, or he drops it and it keeps coming back to him. He just wants to get rid of it. He wants to lose this responsibility, but it always comes back to Jim. I think that it will come back to Jim. Because in the Tales of Arcadia world, time is magic, magic is time. So I think that Jim is still technically the Trollhunter. Which leads me on to my next thing. Well, not my next point, but my next point inside this point of is Toby the new Trollhunter. Technically, I feel like Jim still can wield daylight, and he can still summon the armor if need be. Now, if he's trying to pass on this responsibility to Toby and let Toby be the new Trollhunter, that's fantastic. Good for you, Jim. But I personally think that Jim can still summon and wield daylight. Mainly because, yes, that Jim is technically not the Trollhunter anymore because Toby is, but that Jim was the Trollhunter in the past. And since the past is time and the way that Jim was able to go back in the past, which is magic, and through Merlin's magic, I feel like that's the reason why he can still wield daylight, is because the time and the magic is still connected to him. So technically, Jim, yes, is not the Trollhunter in that present, but he was the Trollhunter in the past. Just like Kanjingar was able to wield daylight, he was already dead, but he was still able to wield it. So I don't see any reason why Jim could still not wield daylight after the Rise of the Titans movie. Alright, so that is point 4. Now we're going to go ahead and go to point 5. Now this is a big one. This is a huge one that might take a little to explain, but I feel like it's very necessary. Number 5, what about the rest of the characters? Now, lots of these characters were affected by Jim being the Trollhunter, so what now? What happens now that Jim knows what will happen to each of those characters? Droll, for example. Now, in my last part, I'm going to kind of explain the fate of, honestly, the whole story a bit differently, because since Toby is the new Trollhunter, it will happen differently. But basically, Droll is alive now, and I think that Jim will definitely try to keep Droll alive. Mainly because Droll is definitely a powerful fighter. He's loyal. And I feel like if Droll was there at the Battle of the Rise of the Titans, I think that they could have had a huge advantage. Nomura. I think that Jim would try to get Nomura on their side before she fell into the Darklands. Mainly because Jim knows now that Toby will probably not enter the Darklands. I'll go ahead and explain that in the next part. But, so he'd want to save Nomura before it was too late. Okay, so what about Strickler? Strickler is one of my favorite characters in Tales of Arcadia because you go from loving him as a villain, but then loving him as one of your favorite characters because he has so much character development. Now, Jim knows how much Strickler is like of a good ally. Like, they learn so much from Strickler. Strickler helps free Claire from Morgana's bond. And Strickler is very, very encouraging to Jim. I feel like Jim really looks up to Strickler, and he really appreciates all the encouragement that Strickler will sometimes give Jim. Also, that Jim knows that his mom and Strickler will love each other. Like, Jim wants his mom to be happy. That's one of the things I love about Jim most, is that he doesn't really care about himself. He just cares about others and their happiness. So, since Jim knows that Strickler is a bad guy right now, his main priority was to get Strickler to become a good guy. And how do you do that? Well, you set up a date with your mom. Now, he knows that Strickler became good because of his mom. So since Strickler went on a date with his mom, that seed's already been planted in his heart to be a good guy. So since Strickler is probably a good guy, that will probably cancel out his whole villain role in Season 1. I'll go ahead and explain that in the next part of the video, but let's just go ahead and say Strickler is definitely a changed character now because Jim went back in time. Okay, how about the fair Claire Nunez? Claire's Claire's character is completely changed when she finds out Jim is the Trollhunter. She's tougher, she's braver, and she's probably a little bit more sassier. But anyways, Claire's character I feel like will be completely different now that Jim went back in time. It's kind of creepy to know that Jim knows exactly how to get the girl. Like, he knows exactly what to do to get Claire. Like when they walked up to her and it's like, oh, so I hear you guys are looking for parts for the play. Or whatever he said. So that part's a little creepy to me. But let's talk about Claire. We're talking about Claire right now. So I feel like Claire, because there's so much that happens to her that makes her character developed. Like, just look at Claire from Season 1 to how it was at the end of Rise of the Titans. She had changed so much. And a lot of that was magic that she gains. I'll go ahead and explain this in the last part of this video, but she probably won't end up getting her magic. And I feel like Jim did that on purpose. Part 6. And how much will the story be changed? Now that Toby's the Trollhunter, a lot is going to change. But we're just going to put Toby to the side right now, and we're going to go ahead and list all the things that Jim did as a Trollhunter. Number 1, he defeated Bular. Number 2, he went into the Darklands. Number 3, He escaped the Darklands, but he also freed Gunmar. Number 4, he became a troll. Number 5, he defeated Gunmar. Number 6, he helped defeat Morgana with his friends. Number 7, he left Arcadia to go to New Jersey with the rest of the trolls because he in fact was a troll now and was injured. Number 8, he was injured during a battle with the Green Knight and encased in time, that way he wouldn't, die. Number 9, he sacrifices himself and becomes a complete troll, losing all his humanity to save his friends. Number 10, he dies, but Claire brings him back to life. And he breaks the amulet. We're not going to go there, though, because Jim is sad. Anyways, so those are the main things that Jim did. Now, let's go ahead and put Toby in the mix. Will Toby defeat Bular? Let's just go ahead and give Toby the benefit of the doubt and say yes. Toby will defeat Bular. Number 2 was Jim went into the Darklands. Now, will Toby go into the Darklands? Mainly, there is no point for Toby to go ahead and enter the Darklands. Now, let me explain why. At the end of Season 1, Strickler is the new villain. Now, because Strickler is probably a good guy now because Jim set up Strickler and his mom with each other at the beginning of the season, Strickler wouldn't have been a villain for pretty much the whole season. So that would mean that he wasn't trying to kill Namora or get Namora killed by Bular. And because of that, Namora wouldn't have told them about the fetch and trying to get more changelings. So, which would imply that Enrique would never become a changeling. So since Enrique is not a changeling, they wouldn't need to go inside the Darklands because the only reason Jim went into the Darklands was to save Enrique. It was not to try to kill Gunmar. Now, so if we go ahead and end with that, we can say that half of Season 1, after Toby defeats Bular, nothing happens after that because they wouldn't need to go inside the Darklands. And basically, Jim is just trying to get into the Darklands at the end of Season 1. Like those last episodes of Season 1, Jim's just trying to get inside the Darklands. So, Season 2. Season 2 is when Jim is inside the Darklands and after he gets out, and then learning that, oops, he accidentally freed Gunmar. Now, since Toby will never have to go into the Darklands because Claire's little brother Enrique was never in the Darklands, we can completely cancel out Season 2. So that is gone as well. And we can also go ahead and cancel out Season 3 because Season 3 only happens because Gunmar was released from the Darklands, and then to bring on the Eternal Night, he brings on Morgana, the new villain. And pretty much, so all the events that happen in Season 3, Toby will not have to deal with because Toby never goes inside the Darklands. Now, Jim knows that Gunmar is in the Darklands. So the question is, will Jim push Toby to kill Gunmar? Now, I don't feel like Gunmar is much of a threat in the Darklands. There's no way he can get out of the Darklands unless the Trollhunter opens up Killahead Bridge. Now, there's still the Changelings and the Janusor who are trying to still free Gunmar. So yes, they are still a threat. But I don't think it's not like a life or death situation. Because if Toby can just fight off all the Changelings that come at him, he'll never have to risk freeing Gunmar. So, we can go ahead and say that half of Season 1, Season 2, and Season 3 never happened to Toby. So, Toby will never have to become a troll. Which means that all the trolls and Toby don't have to leave Arcadia and go to New Jersey. So, what does that imply? Now, that means that they might not have to fight the Green Knight right away. Which also means that they might not even have to fight the Green Knights. Part of the reason they fight the Green Knight is because Jim, Claire, and Duxie and Steve all go back in time during Wizards and then they mess things up. So, if they never have to go back in time to fix everything, then Wizards would never have happened either. So we can cancel out Trollhunter's half of Season 1, Trollhunter Season 2, Trollhunter Season 3, and Wizards out of the equation. So that is all gone. And now we have 3 Below. Now, yes, all the events that took place in 3 Below, I believe would happen. Except for Deja Vu and Lightning in a Bottle. Because that has nothing to do with the Trollhunters Tales of Arcadia story. It's its own, like, little deal. So yes, all the events that happen in 3 Below will happen. The thing is, though, Jim knows what's going to happen in Trollhunters. He knows what's going to happen in Wizards. But Jim wasn't really there for 3 Below. Now, Toby could have called him and told him, hey, guess what happened? This craziness stuff. But Jim doesn't really know what happens. And things will probably play out differently now because Toby will still be in Arcadia as a Trollhunter. Maybe Aja and Krell's parents will still be alive. Maybe they found a different way to kill Valmirando as the god or whatever. So, yes, time will definitely work different. Now, since time works different, does that mean that they still have to fight the Arcane Order? I don't know. Because I feel like some of the reason they fight the Arcane Order is because of the events that happened in Wizards. And if Jim was never the Trollhunter and never went back in time with Clara, Dukes, and Steve, none of that would have ever happened. So, that also leads up to another question. Because Jim won't be the Trollhunter, will Dea become a Trollhunter? Now, Dea was very hesitant to become the Trollhunter until Jim kind of gave her a pep talk and said, like, you can do this, I believe in you, we need you. I feel like, yes, I feel like someone else could have given her a pep talk because the way that time travel works, it's really weird. There has to be a set time for them to go back in time, too. So, Dea was a Trollhunter before Jim went and talked to her. But I feel like lots of the events that happened in Wizards definitely messed up the timeline, but there was already a timeline before that they messed up. So yes, Dea would still be a Trollhunter. Now, I think that's everything, yeah. Anyways, I hope that answered your questions about Rise of the Titans ending, and yeah, I really hope it answered your questions. No, but I like what I said at the beginning. It's not that Rise of the Titans ending was bad. It's just not what we wanted and not what we expected to happen. And the one thing that I didn't like about it was there was no closure. So I hope this kind of helped with the closure behind the Rise of the Titans and Tales of Arcadia series. Thank you guys for watching. Make sure to keep it crispy. Go ahead and throw in the comments what you thought about this video or any theories that you might have of the new Tales of Arcadia timeline. So keep it crispy, guys. Stay lively. Have a great day.